renovation costs. Before we go into the renovation costs, let's talk about what we actually did. Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your boy Juju, and welcome back to the 1% of Juju podcast, where we teach you the practical steps to live your life like the 1%. I am back again with another banger on banger on banger, and I have a great guest with me. I'm super excited about this one. Honestly, I've been waiting to make this episode for forever. But I'm gonna drive right into it. I'm not gonna spoil anything, but I'm gonna introduce my guest, my amazing business partner, my homie Andrew Balach. Welcome to the podcast, man. Introduce yourself to the people.
Hey Juju, thanks for having me. Andrew Balach here. Yeah. So like Juju said, we've been business partners. We've done deals together, and now we're here to talk about it and share a little bit with you guys.
Yeah, no, we're gonna put you guys on game for real today because we're super excited. We we're gonna speak about one of our deals, specifically working, doing a reno and kind of like breaking down, from top to finish, kind of what we started, what we paid for it, and all the way down to kind of like how much we made out of it, and really put you on so you can do the same eventually, and that's really the goal. But like before we start, like, can you just give a quick introduction on like how you even got started, like flipping home, how you got into the real estate? Because you're not from a real estate background or anything, so tell us how you got started with this.
Yeah, that's right. I'm not from a real estate background. I actually work in accounting, so I have an accounting background. I started flipping houses on top of my day job because I wanted to make more income, obviously, like everyone does. And, I started with 20 grand that I saved up. That took me probably like 10 years to save up. And then I put 5% down on my first mortgage to buy a house to flip. And then I just kept growing it. And it's been flips ever since.
Yeah. What would you say has been kind of like the most gratifying thing along the process before we jump into things? Because even just now you talked about the 5%, and we're going to come back to that. But before that, just that question, what do you think has been the most gratifying thing along that process?
Just like going from I don't think I can flip a house to I flipped a house.
Yeah, honestly, that's really it.
Because at the beginning, like I was really interested in rental properties because passive income and all that.
Yep.
But once I realized that it's not really that much, you can make a lot more on a flip. I was like, that would be great, but it's so hard. I don't know any of the trades. I don't know this. I don't know that.
Yeah.
I could never do that. But then, I just stuck to it and I just kept thinking about it, learning more and more. And then eventually I grew the confidence to be able to go and do it. So, yeah.
100%. It's crazy how quick you can kind of learn. And like, that's really the only way to learn is to kind of just start getting to it and doing it. But okay, so I want to talk about the flip, but you mentioned something. You said that your first flip, you put 5% down. And you're kind of the person that taught me, because our flip, we wanted to put 10% down. And you advised against that. So tell me a little bit of why that, and we can jump into that specifically. And then that's going to be kind of like a smooth transition into it.
Yeah, because the first time I had to put 5% down because that's all I had to
honestly
buy a house.
Yeah.
But the problem is when you put less than 20% down, it becomes an insured mortgage. And when you do an insured mortgage, you got to pay an extra like 2% or something to CHMC. So in a buy and hold situation, it's not really a big deal because that fee is, over 5 years or 10 years of the mortgage. But if you're flipping a property, you have to pay that extra right off the top. So right off the bat, as soon as I purchased it and they added that fee, I had to pay 10K. So that was 10K off my first deal as soon as I signed the papers.
Exactly. And for the people that maybe you've been following the podcast for a while, the fee that he's referring to is basically private mortgage insurance that I've discussed in the past, right? So When you put less than 20% down, you got to pay that fee on top of it. And like you were saying, like when you're paying off over a long period of time, realistically, the value of the home is going to grow. Your mortgage payment is, you're going to pay some of the mortgage down. So on the back end of things, you're going to be okay. But if you're looking to do a quick flip, often people don't realize is like you're dealing with tight margins, right? Because I remember I had looked at one deal that I sent to you, and I can't even remember. I was trying to go through our text message conversations, but there's been so many exchanges since. But we had looked at one deal, and I was like, oh, like the Renos. I think that it was like, well, they were selling for like 335 or something like that, and the rentals were going to cost 40,000, but they think that we can sell for 400K. And I was like, that gives us a good enough margin. And you were like, no, because there's other fees involved. So when you're doing a flip, you're actually dealing with very tight margins. So an extra $10,000 on top of your deal can make a huge difference, right?
100%.
Yeah, and that's the part that a lot of people don't realize. So let's go through so just to set the stage here, I'll just run through like the numbers of like where we started, where we ended up, and then we can kind of talk through line by line the expenses that we've been through, and speak to why we spent that money, if I can find the right page here. So essentially we bought the house for $416, right? So $416,000. So our down payment, you remember the down payment? It was like 80,
like 82 or something.
Yeah, 82,000 was the 20%. And then we plus like the closing costs, it's another $6,000 or something like that. And we ended up selling the house for 500K flat by the end of it all. And in the midst of it, our total expenses were, I'm trying to see the total here, but I can't remember exactly how much we spent, and we can probably figure that out, but we'll figure that out as we go. But the first thing here that I have that I wanted to speak about is kind of anything from like an acquisition cost standpoint. That I think that's the part that people often underrate, because when they take a look at HGTV, they see those flips. It's like, oh, we bought the house for this much, and then we sold it for this much, and we put this amount in renovation, and here's how much money we spent. So in here, the lines that we tracked were legal fees, land transfer fees, lender fees, broker fees, hard money, appraisal, and inspection. Do you want to speak to like kind of what all of those are? Like, let's start with like legal fees.
Yeah, like the first thing you got to take into consideration is that you're not just buying it, renovating it, and flipping it. Mm-hmm. You're incurring all the other costs along the way, right? So legal fees, like, it's how much the lawyer is going to cost to do the transaction to buy you a home.
Yeah.
If it's just a simple, traditional mortgage, then the legal fees are going to be a little lower. If you have to do some creative financing, sometimes it's going to cost you a little bit more. So the simpler the deal
or a lot more
is, yeah, or a lot more.
Yeah.
And if you have a more simple deal, basically it'll cost you less, and it's less work for the lawyer, and it's cheaper for you.
Yeah, 100%. Like we should probably talk about, because there's really two ways of doing financing when you're flipping a home. You can either do it through like a simple a real mortgage, but in that situation, you kind of have to prove that you're going to be owner occupied, right? Which is that you're actually going to live in the home. So it has to be in an area that you're actually going to live in and things like that. Are there ways to do that, like a bank mortgage through like for a flip or things?
Yeah, like you can do an open mortgage. So it's a mortgage that you're allowed to pay off.
Mm-hmm.
The interest rates are usually a little higher on something like that. But if you're just trying to do your first flip, or like if you're just starting out, it's not a big deal to just buy it the traditional way and just make the best of the lower rates.
Makes sense. Then land transfer tax. I see here we spent like $4,500 on that. What in the world is that, and why do we spend so much money on it?
Land transfer tax. Oh, it's it's exactly what it says.
Yeah.
Actually, it's just whenever the land transfers title, you got to pay tax. And it's always the buyer. It's not the seller who pays, it's the buyer. So yeah, every time you buy a house, you're paying land transfer tax. The difference in price it changes depending on how expensive the property is. So more expensive properties have higher taxes.
Yeah.
So if you're in the like starter home, you're going to be paying like around 4,500. But when
Hmm.
you get into the larger deals, like when you're buying like now, well, in today's market, it's not that crazy, but like
Yeah, exactly.
600K, then you're probably paying closer to like 7,000 in land transfer tax.
No, that makes sense. And that's just basically to get the title in your name versus the person that's selling the house's name. You had a couple other fees here that we didn't pay because obviously we went through the traditional mortgage route, the lender fee, broker fee, and hard money. Um, like those are other things to keep into account. But when would that come into question if people were to want to do a flip and have to pay that money?
Yeah, like all those fees, that's related to private money. So if you can't get traditional financing from the bank because you have too many properties or you don't qualify or whatever reason, uh, those are the fees that you have to pay to get the money from someone else. So
Mm-hmm.
a lender fee is the person who's actually lending it to you.
Yeah.
You can pay them an upfront fee of usually around 2%. A broker fee is the person who connects you to the person who's lending to you, and they also usually take a fee of around 1% if you do it through a broker.
Mm-hmm.
So those can get very expensive very quick in today's markets with prices high as they are. And it's just, if you can borrow from someone directly, that's one less fee you got to pay. So you just got to take it all into consideration.
Yeah. So as you kind of go through the journey of like building those relationships and building your team, right? Like it probably is a good idea to kind of get a broker, a lender, and to build those relationships with those people. I guess, and to have those on your side so that whenever you're ready, you can go directly to a lender instead of having to look for a mortgage broker that will then connect you with a lender and things like that. That's obviously not that easy to do, but if you're able to do that in the long run, it's going to be very beneficial for you. Appraisal and inspection. So we didn't pay for our inspection, which you know could have been a nightmare, but it wasn't. And then the appraisal. Do you want to talk to those two, what they really are, and like why would you want to spend money on that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, usually the bank needs an appraisal when you actually buy the property, but sometimes they don't. So if they request one, you got to pay it. And it's usually about $500. And there's usually nothing you can really do about that if you go for traditional financing. If the bank wants it, you have to do it for them. And the other one was inspection. Back in the day, we used to put inspection clauses in real estate because it wasn't such a hot market, and you actually could.
Yeah.
But I mean, for anyone who's bought a property in the last probably like year and a half, I
Mm-hmm.
there's very few inspection clauses because buyers just won't go, or sellers just won't go for it. They got 30 offers, all firm. Uh, you
Some of
know,
them coming all cash, and it's crazy offers out there. And you
yeah,
like you almost can't compete if you're coming in with an inspection clause. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I mean, yeah, if when the market's normal, there's inspection clauses, and basically that just gives you a way to you get someone to come in, take a look, and see if there's any major problems. But for us in this, like, let's talk about like our specific deal here.
Mm-hmm.
Usually with a newer home, because this home was built in probably like the early 80s based on the construction.
Yeah.
And if it was built in the early 80s, there's probably not going to be any issues with it. Like there's not going to be any lead pipes, there's not going to be asbestos, there's not going to
100%. Yeah.
be those type of things, foundation issues, because it's not that old and everything's up to code. So yeah, that's why I like to go for like newer homes because there's less chances of having those issues.
That brings up a really good point that I think I haven't touched on the podcast. Like, but um, for an average, like someone that's not a real estate investor, right? If you're talking about a home built in the 80s, that's probably an old home. What would you consider an old home, or what is an old home in the real estate? Or are we talking 50 years plus, 70 years plus? Because yeah, that's an interesting point that you bring up here.
Yeah, like to me, like I own houses that were built in like the 20s. So
Mm-hmm.
100-year-old
Yeah.
house is not really that unusual for a real estate investor. I mean, that is still old. I'd rather not purchase 100-year-old houses,
Yeah.
but when you get a good deal, you got to take it, right?
100%. No, definitely. But I think that's a good insight. And it did, like Andrew just said, like this is not to say that old homes are bad. This is only to say that, they may come with different issues and you might have to take other things into consideration. You can't just see it, jump on it, make an offer, and a firm offer and just say like, oh, everything's going to go well if you're going to go about, um, especially flipping. But sweet. Let's move over to our holding costs. Unless there was anything else that you want to mention about our acquisition costs, like something that people should keep in mind or should be aware of.
Just like if we're gonna go in chronological order, I think one key like to acquiring the property that we had was you actually wrote a letter to the owner.
True, 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 true. Yeah.
So I think you should probably touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, definitely, especially in this market. Now, that's a really good point, and thanks for bringing that up. It's really when you're going about finding those flips, and you have to be a little creative, right? And the interesting part is, like I said, that we bought the house for 416. That wasn't the biggest offer, and we weren't coming in all cash and none of that, right? Like we were coming in just, yes, we did put in a firm offer, but just like everyone else, we were just putting in a normal offer. And really the letter that I sent was a little bit to pull at the heartstrings, explaining my situation, who I am, kind of my intentions for the home. And the seller decided, just talking about my story, where I came from, how I grew up. And the seller, I guess, identified with my story. I don't know if they were from the same, the same country originally that I was from, or what it was exactly, but for some reason they decided to move forward with my story. And like my realtor kind of called me, like they were like, for some reason they like your offer and things like that. So we need to make a move now. But that's a really good point. But there's also other things, and I think that you've had success doing that specifically, and I kind of adopted that and haven't had as much success as of yet, but I'm still trying. And is just sending actual letters to people that aren't even selling their home, right? Or like knocking on doors or sending letters to different houses. Do you want to talk about that part? Because the sending letters to someone that has their house on the market is one thing, and then there's obviously what you've been trying to leverage.
Yeah, so I mean, off-market properties are obviously preferable to things that are listed.
Mm-hmm.
It's basic economics, right? Like if you're very visible and you got lots of offers, you're probably the sale price is probably going to be higher. So ideally, you want to be like the only offer,
Mm-hmm.
if you can be. So I won't go too deep into it, but like a lot of off-market deals I've done have been from like knocking on doors or sending letters to the neighborhood and just kind of asking, just ask hundreds of people if they want to sell, and you'll find the right person who doesn't want to go through an agent for whatever reason. And then it's a lot easier to make a deal, and you can also get better terms. Like it's not just the price that matters so much, but it's the terms. Like one of my
100%.
one of my first private deals I did was like I put like 20 days of financing. And if the other person's realtor was there, they would have said, "Oh no, that's too long. You shouldn't accept that. Just look for another offer." But because I built a relationship with the person and I was the only offer, it wasn't a big deal that I put 20 days financing.
Really good point there. And I mean, like you say, like realtors can be great, but like also, not always, right? Like there are some times where they are taking their cut, they are taking their fees, and you know, sometimes it does make sense, I guess, to work with them, but not always. So you want to be mindful of that, and if it can save you a couple bucks, definitely take advantage of that. So sweet. No, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's actually important. Now, next up, we got the holding costs, and I think that those are the costs that I underrated kind of going into it, where I was like, yeah, you just think about what it costs you to buy the house minus what you're going to spend on the reno, and then you run away, or you go away with your profit. But then you obviously brought up like the holding costs of our property, which in here we have taxes, heat, electricity, water heater, insurance, and what else do we have? Our mortgage should be somewhere in there. Yeah. And our mortgage. So Let's talk through. I mean, those are pretty self-explanatory, but I would say like just keep in mind that you will have to pay, right? Like you do have to pay property taxes for that amount of time. Just basic bills that you're paying right now, like utilities, heat, electricity, water. You have to pay those things, and you do have to have homeowners insurance during while you're doing this flip. But anything that you wanted to add on that specifically?
Yeah, it's just like it's really important to make sure that you know what your budget is and what
Mm-hmm.
your carrying costs are for while you're doing the flip. Because I know my first flip, I did the same thing. I just said, okay, I just have to do this and like whatever. So I just kind of took my shot. But yeah, I was down to like I was down to like pennies
Yeah,
because
exactly.
because I didn't take that into consideration. But
Yep.
you're paying your mortgage, your heat, your electricity and your water. That could be like 300 $400
Mm-hmm.
a month. Your property tax could be like 250 300 a month. So, and your mortgage you're paying, well, now you're paying at least 12 to like 15 1600 at this point.
Exactly.
So I mean, yeah, like while you're doing this flip, you're going to be bleeding out couple $1,000s every month,
Mm-hmm.
and you got to be prepared for that. So you can't just have enough money to do the flip. You got to have enough money to sustain yourself while you're doing it.
100%. Like keep in mind that like cash flow can be right, and in here we budgeted, so we actually did a pretty good job with time, but we budgeted for more time because you also don't know how long your house can be on the market, and things like that. So if you're really like Andrew said, like if you're down to pennies, and your house is staying on the market for an extra month or two, you could be in a really bad spot. So just make sure that you keep those things in mind. Like same thing with mortgage payment, but mortgage payment is kind of interesting, right? Because like part of that is going towards interest, and part of it was going towards the principal payment, which obviously you get back at the end.
Yeah, and that's a cool like little detail that really
Mm-hmm.
not a lot of people think about is that like half the mortgage is interest and about half of it is principal, which
Yep.
is the amount that was loaned to you. So like while you're I guess you have to understand that you're paying down the loan and you're paying an interest expense is basically what
Mm-hmm.
you're doing. So like by when you go to sell it, the mortgage will be less than you originally acquired it for. Say you held it for 10 months and you paid down $10,000. So that's an
Mm-hmm.
extra $10,000 of profit that you get at the end of your flip.
Yeah, exactly. So there's basically only like the interest portion that's really an expense. Outside of that, it's really putting a part of your money into another savings account that you're going to recoup towards the end of it, which is pretty cool. But once again, it is an expense, and from a cash flow standpoint, just make sure that you keep that in mind. Because for us, the total monthly payment was like 1230, but I can't remember. Like about half of it, like Andrew said, about half of it was going towards interest, and the other half was going towards paying down the loan. We obviously in here on our list we included a whole lot of like other payments, like hard money loan and things like that, because those can get pretty expensive. But luckily, we did not have to go that route in this situation. Now, the interesting part. So the renovation costs. Before we go into the renovation costs, let's talk about what we actually did. And I don't know if you want to talk through that, or if you remember like what we actually did to the house. And then we can talk through how much that cost. But in total, it cost us right around 25K. But let's discuss what we actually did in the home.
Yeah, so we did all cosmetic stuff. We
Mm-hmm.
um we did, I guess, one structural change. We
Yep.
changed a load bearing wall, but the rest of it was just new kitchen, a couple new things in the bathroom, new paint, and we put in like an in-law suite in the basement.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's like to do all that for only 25,000. That's pretty good. We saved a lot of money by like we did some of the work ourselves, but yeah, we did minimal and we got it off the market pretty quick.
Yeah, and I think that another thing that's important that really I remember you really putting me on is like understanding where you're going to get the most value. So you talked about like removing the load bearing wall, and that was really the intent for that, was to create an open concept between the kitchen and the living room, right? And I think that that kind of made the house, honestly, the house became the nicest house in the neighborhood. And that will definitely got us more money than anything else. But I remember I was thinking about taking another wall down. I don't know if you remember the staircase, where
Oh
I was
yeah.
kind of intending to take that wall down. And you brought up the idea that, like, well, if it's going to cost us $1,000 or $3,000 to take that wall down, is someone going to be willing to pay for in order to, just because that wall is down? And I just don't think so. And I think that that's something that when people go into these places that they should probably think about, right?
Yeah, like just you gotta just focus on doing
Yep.
the high value renovations. What you were saying about basically for everyone listening, there was a staircase
Mm-hmm.
and it was blocked off all by drywall.
Yep.
But it was right in the living room. So if we took out the
Exactly.
drywall and we you could make it see through, so you could kind of see through the all up the stairs and it would kind of
Mm-hmm.
be more open. But like at the end of the day, I don't think anyone would really care. Like the rest of the house was really nice, and having that would have been nice, but I don't think it would have been a deal breaker. And I don't think it would have been something that someone would have paid, oh my God, I have to have this because the stairs are see-through. So
That's
that's
right.
kind of why we didn't do it.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot of that wow factor. Like for us, like we just didn't think that, right? We said that we sold the house for 500. I don't think that we would have sold it for 510 having that wall down, right? So it would have been an extra amount of money, an extra amount of risk, because when you're taking down walls, anything can happen, right? Like you can, the load can be all over the place. The contractors can, it can take them a little longer. Whatever it is, you're putting yourself at so much risk, and on the other side, to potentially not get that much more in return. While we know for a fact that taking that wall down in the kitchen definitely got us some extra cash, compared to what the comps were selling. So that's an interesting part. But just looking through this, I think that I want to talk about the areas where we were really able to save money specifically, because there are some things that, obviously, paying for the contractor, you want to find good relationships and people that you can really work with and that really well. But I think about, like, one area is taking a look at our kitchen. We didn't spend that much money on our kitchen. It was kind of crazy how much money we saved. Like in total, like the cabinets here, I think that I have them listed at, like, in total, it was about 3,000 that we spent, or maybe even less than that, like 2,500 to $3,000 that we spent, on our kitchen cabinets, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was really cheap, especially because we did IKEA, like we didn't do
Mm-hmm.
anything custom, and that's part of the reason for the cheap price. But the other thing was that we spent a lot of time like going through all the different options that IKEA had. And
Yep.
on our original consultation with IKEA, they showed us like five options, and they were all three times more expensive than the option we went
Yep.
with, and they looked exactly the same.
Yeah,
but they,
exactly.
but they don't want to show you that. So you gotta go that extra mile. You gotta find that stuff.
Yeah, and you do have to spend a little bit of time. And I know that, like, you spend quite a bit of time on, like, everything. And I'm even thinking right now, like, looking at our appliances. Anyone, the easy thing would have probably been to just go over there and grab some appliances from, I don't know, from any store, or any, brand new appliances. But we were able to find appliances on Facebook Marketplace at an insane deal, right?
Yeah, I love Facebook Marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone loves Facebook Marketplace, but I do. And it's because you gotta be diligent. Like you have to watch. You gotta
Yep.
always be paying attention. But when a right deal comes up, like how much? Like we got four pieces for $1,500. So we got the stove, the dishwasher, the fridge, and the overhead
And
microwave.
microwave, yeah.
Yeah, that was $1,500.
Mm-hmm.
And they were pretty much brand new. Someone from Brampton, some rich person was just remodeling and they just wanted to get rid of everything and
Yep.
they didn't even care. They're like, here, just take it all. It all works. It's all pretty much new. So we got that. And if you compare that to how much that would have cost if you bought it all brand new,
Yeah.
I mean, just the fridge alone can be like 11, 1,200 bucks sometimes. So like all together that can come out to like three grand. And all it took us was we even got it delivered. They
Yep.
delivered it to us.
Exactly.
So it basically it took us what, a few, maybe like a couple of weeks of looking on marketplace to casually to save like 1,500 to 2 grand.
Yeah, exactly. No, and that's what, when you're doing a flip where you're really going to optimize, whether it's your time and money, like that's really where you're going to get your money out of, is like trying to save that 2 grand here, trying to save a grand there. And overall is going to make an actual really big difference in the overall result of your flip. I think about one area where we splurged, I guess, a little bit, or I don't know if we did necessarily splurge, but that we did intend to spend a lot of money was the countertops.
That's
Um,
right.
and the reason for that, you want to talk about maybe like the reason for that, because we wanted to do a really nice kitchen and things like that, right?
Yeah, I mean the countertop. What was the situation? It was like we had a couple options.
We
And
looked all over the place.
yeah, like we looked at a bunch of places, and we brought the samples of the cabinets, and we brought the samples of the backsplash and of
Mm-hmm.
the floor, and we brought all three of those pieces to all the different places. And it really does matter, like
Mm-hmm.
that aesthetic, making sure it really matches and making sure it's not tacky marble on marble on marble.
Yep.
Like that's very important. And I don't care if it costs an extra $1,000, like
Mm-hmm.
you gotta have that look and that pattern and that matching right, because that's what pops when people come in. Everything looks good. We had some cheaper options, but we found that perfect match, and it was from IKEA, and it was a little more expensive, but
Mm-hmm.
100% it was the right move, and it just made it look amazing.
100%. Because and you have to understand, is like when you do a when you're renovating a home, you want to make sure that when people walk in and they come to an open house or they come for a visit, that that their first reaction is, "Wow, I want to live here," right? Because it's a big purchase for people. If there's something off, if the countertop, like you're saying, like the color is off or something is a little not matching, people will see that right away, and they might not even see that specifically, but they're all gonna be like, something is off here. And they might not make that decision right then and there, just because of little things like that. So make sure you keep that in mind. Like there are some places that we knew we were going to spend a little bit more money, right? Like we were okay with spending money in the bathroom. We were okay with spending money in the kitchen because we knew that those are big ticket items, but we didn't even end up spending that much money in the bathroom, right? Like it was really more about, like, we got a new shower head. We changed up what else? We did the tiles and then just cleaned up a little bit.
Yeah, and that's all
Yeah.
that we really needed to do in the bathroom, because like at first we thought, oh, let's do the whole thing, but the tiles in the shower were pretty much new. So
Mm-hmm.
we would have just been kind of throwing money at it for no reason. Like it looked fine and it was updated, so there's no need.
Yeah. Now, and it was funny kind of how we walked into it, like thinking like, oh, we're gonna do this and everything. And I think that we spoke about it earlier. It's kind of understanding, what can I afford not to do, right? Versus what can I not afford, right? Like what do I need to do? Sorry, I'm all over the place here, but what do I need to do in order to make sure that this place looks wow right now? Another thing I wanted to speak about is the trick that we pulled in order to not spend any money and making the in-law suite downstairs. Well, we did spend contractor money, but outside of that, like, it was absolutely great what we did. We want to speak about that.
Yeah, like it was funny actually. The kitchen upstairs, it was like it wasn't wow, but it was good. Like it was solid, it was wood, it was like good stuff. So we literally just took the kitchen from upstairs, disassembled it, and put it back together in the basement.
Yeah.
The contractors, all he had to do was unscrew it, screw it back in, and do the plumbing and the electrical for the stove and the sink. But other than that, so it only cost us like $2,000 for them just to like take it all out and put it all back together and do the plumbing and the electrical.
Which was absolutely great because now we have, like they can turn it like maybe not into a full duplex, but they can rent out the basement if they feel like it. And or just have like a simple in-law suite, which is absolutely great. So when people look at that, they can look at it as, okay, additional source of income. Therefore I can throw a little bit more money at my offer or whatever I'm willing to offer here, which is really, really cool. So those are always things, whenever you can add a unit to a place, honestly, it's always very well worth it, and it's going to make you some money in the long run. So obviously do it in a legal way. Try to be careful with that. You don't want to just try stuff and things don't work, because even we had a hard time, right, like with the electrical and getting the right
all those breakers.
Yeah, all those breakers, like we spun our head a little bit, but we ended up getting it done, and it all worked out. So that was really cool. I wanted to speak about something that we didn't do, because I had the idea, because with the wash and dry being in the in-law suite, I wanted to bring the wash and dryer and make kind of the wash and dryer unit upstairs, and we decided not to do that. And can you speak a little bit, because I thought that like it was actually like a genius idea not doing it, but like can you talk about like why we didn't, and another tip for people like on what to focus on and what maybe isn't that important when you're doing these?
Yeah, like it's just a situation. I guess it's the same situation.
Mm-hmm.
Is someone gonna pay way more just because there's laundry upstairs and downstairs?
Yeah.
Well, it's an in-law suite. It's not a legal duplex. So having two laundries doesn't really, like, it makes it more functional as an in-law suite, but it really
Mm-hmm.
doesn't change the zoning or the usage of the property.
Yep.
So and actually the other reason was because I just bought my personal residence, and the guy did
Mm-hmm.
the exact same thing. He put a kitchen downstairs and he didn't change the laundry. And I thought, why? But it's because, yeah, it's he didn't make it a legal duplex. And
Yep.
if you want to add, and it's also tricky to do, to
Mm-hmm.
add laundry, because you need another line to the
Exactly.
breaker, and you need to bring in like water, like, to water source to the laundry. So it's a little tricky. You got to rip up the drywall and maybe do some plumbing if you want to do that. So it's a lot of extra for really not necessarily much of a benefit.
Mm-hmm. So just keep that in mind, like as you're going through. Once again, you want to do the things that are necessary, the things that are going to make you pay. Because think about your personal property. Would you have paid like an extra like 5, 10K just to have the laundry upstairs? Probably not, right? And that's the reality. That's why he probably didn't do it. But if at some point you want to do it because you want to add a tenant downstairs, then you have that, you have that flexibility, and it's probably going to be still pretty good return for you. So
I think a good point in general, like kind of on that same topic, is that it's very, like, especially relating to our deal, was that um like there was two bathrooms in our house,
mm-hmm.
but all the other comps only had one bathroom.
Yep.
So the fact that there was already a bathroom downstairs and then all the other ones didn't have it, like, that was kind of enough to make it much more valuable without having to add any more work.
Yeah.
Whereas if we bought one with no bathroom, oh, we put another bathroom, that's another 5K. We put in laundry, oh, that's another set of laundry, because the laundry machines aren't cheap either. That's another
mm-hmm.
thousand and a bit, right?
Yep.
So like, they really taking a close look at the comps, like, that was one of the main reasons why we bought it. This
Yep.
is a three bedroom, two bathroom, and every other
mm-hmm.
house is a three one.
One. Yep.
So that was another reason why we didn't have to do extra stuff, because it was already better than all the other ones on the block.
Yeah, that's such a big deal. When you guys are doing, do not ever enter any flip if you don't have a clear idea of what the comps are and what you can sell the house for. Because that's another mistake, like I was eventually going to talk about, is like I see a lot of people doing flips and turning, let's say, we renovated, this home was in Welland, Ontario, and we could have turned it into like a luxury home with all custom everything and things like that. But the reality is, like, people weren't going to pay 750 or 800K for that home because it's luxury no matter what, because of where it is, the neighborhood it's in and things like that. It's a good family neighborhood, but it's not a neighborhood where someone that would afford an 800K house would go and live, right? So just keep those things in mind when you're doing it. Like, you take a close look at the comps and being like, okay, well, I'm going to make my house the nicest neighborhood, the nicest house in the neighborhood. So maybe people pay an extra 20K or an extra 10K for my house versus the house that's down the street that's also renovated. But don't go crazy just spending 100K on a flip, that for a home that's not going to sell for 100 or 150K more. I hope that makes sense. But that was
what did you think about the area that we chose?
Dude, I personally love that area. I thought it was so cool. Just like all the families, I thought that like it was like a perfect, if you're a first time home buyer, and you're looking to get outside the city, or maybe like, because there's a lot of kids, like the kids kept I stayed in the house for a couple of days, while we were going through the renos, and the kids would always come up to the house and like talk to you. So everyone is like super close, super tight knit. So if you're like a young family, that's like the place for you to be.
Really nice street.
Yeah, exactly. So the neighborhood was really nice.
The
Overall, just
university.
true, the university was right down the street, walking distance from the house. So like that's where, and that's really why I like the place, because I was like, if we put the in-law suite downstairs, it's super easy to rent it to a student that goes to the school right here that wants to pay like 500-600 bucks a month for rent. And for you, it makes sense because that's just taking a little bit off your mortgage, but it's still an affordable mortgage. So I thought that was like super cool. With that being said, and yeah, just neighborhood was nice, and we obviously looked at the comps, and we were really lucky because there's a house literally that sold that where the renos were not as nice as what we had, and it sold for like 20K less than what we ended up selling. So we had a pretty good idea of like what we could do or what we could get in the end.
Yeah, and another cool like point about like our flip was that I like doing, like I prefer to do a flip on a house that's predictable.
Mm-hmm.
Like a semi-detached, 3 bedrooms upstairs, 1 bathroom on the main floor, one in the basement. Like there's hundreds of that being
Yeah.
sold like on a weekly basis all over the
Hmm.
place. So you can just go on, housesigma.com, type in semi-detached, and you'll probably see the exact same house, the exact same construction, built around the same time, same layout. You know where all the load-bearing walls are.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and if there's 30 of those on the same street, you can very easily tell what it's going to sell for.
Yep.
So all you need to know really is the renovation cost. And if your renovation cost is on, then like the profit is pretty much guaranteed. And we, like you said, like the closest comp sold for 20K less, but we said, hey, it's got a basement in the bathroom in the
In the
basement.
basement.
We're going to put a kitchen in the basement. We think it'll sell for at least 20K more, if not more.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we would have just waited and had some patience, I think we probably could have sold it for significantly more.
Yeah,
But we had to move on to our next deal, right?
yeah,
So
exactly. We did
like,
rush a
yeah,
little bit, but
whatever.
yeah. No, totally. And that's a good point. And that brought up like another question, I guess, for me, which was the I can't remember it now, but it'll get back to me. But that is a good point. I think that it's interesting. Like, just, oh yeah, I was going to ask, like, how do you get to figure out, like, how would you recommend? Because like for us, it's been like for you specifically, my recommendation would be like, if you're starting to flip, work with someone that has done it before. But how would you recommend someone goes about? Because if you walk in a home, and you're just like looking at everything and you're like, okay, what in the world, um, what's going to cost what? I don't know how much trim cost. I don't know how much windows cost. I don't know how much a kitchen costs. How do you use that in order to go in and, just make an offer? Because it's going to be hard. Your offer is going to depend on, right? Like when you crunch your numbers, okay, it makes sense if I get the house at this price. Because otherwise you can just go in and I think about like our house, for example. If we went in and made an offer for like 470, well, we would have looked like idiot, but we probably would have gotten the house as well, right? So, but how do you go about figuring out that right off the bat when you're just going on visits and seeing houses, whether it's with a realtor or just by yourself?
Yeah, like you don't necessarily got to know everything yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and I certainly don't know everything, but
Yeah.
all you can do is just try to bring someone with you who knows.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're beginning, it's the hardest because essentially you're going to go up to someone and say, hey, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm going to look at this house that I may or may not buy, and you may or may not do the renovation, but can you come with me and tell me how much it's going to cost?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
No,
obviously that's really difficult, but like honestly, you got to fake it till you make it, because
hmm
if you bring those guys with you and they can give you a cost and you can make a good offer, then you're gonna do it, and then it's easier to keep doing it, you know.
exactly.
Like the better you get, the easier it gets. The hardest flip by far is the first one.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
like just pulling the trigger on the first one, having the confidence to actually like go and throw down your entire life savings on a flip is
Yeah,
like, you know,
exactly.
and then once you do that the first time, you're fine. But it's just, yeah,
Yeah.
it's the first one.
I was gonna ask because one thing that I remember you doing like every single time is just like walking in and taking a video of every single thing. And I think that that's actually so important if you're brand new, because at least when you leave your visit, and I remember, it can be kind of awkward if you're dealing with a realtor, but they should never restrict you from doing that, because if you're walking in and at least you're walking out and you can go speak to someone that knows about it and be like, hey, I have a video of this thing if you want to just take a look at it, without making them have to go somewhere or anything like that. At least they can give you an estimate of what it would look like, and then you can kind of go from there. So that would be another avenue to at least try, to get you not too much in trouble there. um but yeah, so that's kind of like what renovation, all of that. Obviously, I'm not going to bring you guys line item by line item what we spent on renovation, because a lot of this is like bolts, or like a screwdriver, or things to do to clean up the backyard. Like that was an interesting process, cleaning up the backyard. Some interesting stuff we found there. The guy that was staying there had a very interesting collection, so that was really fun. So now moving on to the selling costs, which total. So here we have realtor commission, mortgage prepayment cost, legal, HST on commission. And we have staging in here, which we didn't do. We did a virtual staging with our realtor did for us, just for the pictures, and then when people came to see it, it was just an empty house. But let's talk. Do we want to talk about the realtor commission, or is that still a little bit of a sore subject for us?
Well, it's certainly still a sore subject, but I
Yeah.
think people deserve to know.
Yeah. We got to tell them. We got to tell them. So essentially, yeah, we spent 15,000 on. I don't know if this was what we were expecting to pay. I think we paid more than that. I think we paid like 18,000 in realtor commission. I think that's what it ended up being, because we worked with a realtor. We were trying to list a house on our own. The realtor had told us that like they were going to give us a deal, ended up giving us much less of a deal than what they claimed they were going to. Wasn't very open and honest about it, which was the part that I was disappointed at. And when I confronted the person about it, they were just kind of like, oh, no, like I made it very, very clear. And I'm like, well, I have the message conversation here where you can clearly see that I asked for a specific number and you didn't give it to me. And they were like, instead of, I would have been okay if they were just like, you know what, I messed up, I should have been clearer. But like I was kind of a little turned off by the fact that they were just like, no, like I told you everything was really clear, but at no point did I ever get a number, because otherwise we would have included it in our spreadsheet that we tracked literally the whole time, throughout our flip. But essentially when we closed, our lawyer just sent us the bill and we received a bill for 3,000 more than we expected to. The mortgage prepayment cost, I think that this is actually a really important one. $1,800. Do you want to speak about that one?
Yeah, huge huge opportunity to make a mistake if you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
So mortgages can be fixed or variable. If it's variable and you pay it off, you're gonna pay 3 months interest. So probably like $2,100, 2,500. Not really a
Mhm.
big deal. But if you get a fixed mortgage and you pay it off early, the penalties can be as large as like 15,000. And like I said, that was like the one of the first mistakes I made. I accidentally did a fixed mortgage instead of a variable mortgage because I just didn't understand.
Mhm.
And yeah, I went to sell the house, and prepayment cost $14,000, and it just decimated the profits. Right, it was just killer.
Yeah, exactly. So make sure that if you're going to hold on to the house for a short amount of time, just make sure that it is a variable mortgage because you can pay that and include that in kind of like your closing costs and be okay with it. If you go for a fixed mortgage, it's going to be a lot more difficult. But fixed mortgages are okay if you plan on holding on to the house, right? Like if it's more of a long-term play, but here we're speaking about flips specifically. So do not make that mistake. This is extremely important if you're looking to flip homes. This is very important. This is where you're going to get probably the most value here. Then legal fees, I think pretty self-explanatory. You got to pay for a lawyer once again to make that transaction go through. So maybe you didn't think about this, but when you buy a house, you don't show up to someone's house with like, hey, I have this load of cash, and you hand them the money. There's lawyers involved that help you through that transaction. So there's that, and finally, HST on commission. Not much to say here, right? That those are just taxes.
Not much to say except that like most people don't really think about that or know about
Mhm.
that before they get into it. Like, a lot of people know, oh, realtors, they usually do like 2%, 2%, so about 4%. But yeah, like you have to pay HST on it,
Mhm.
and 13% on 18,000 or whatever, that's another $1,000. So, if you're cutting it close, and you're not counting these little costs here and there,
Exactly.
they could add up to like 10. And if your profit's only going to be like 20, 30, then you might be only making 10.
Yeah, no, 100%. And last, so that's a really good point because you want to keep those in mind. But the last one would be that I have here is staging. And can you tell me why we stage, or why you would want to stage, where you might want to invest in something like that, when that may make sense?
I've done it with staging, I've done it
Hmm.
without staging. Depends like on the market. Like when I first started like 3 years ago, the market wasn't so crazy. So I decided to use staging because I thought it would be like make it more appealing. But now with the way the market is, I mean, if you're gonna spend $2,000 on staging, like I don't know, I don't think it. I think people are buying stuff sight unseen for cash offers. Like in this market, I don't think staging is necessarily worth it.
Right, makes sense. Makes sense. Um, yeah, and that you're right. That's basically it. Like there's not that much to say about it. It's just it depends like what market you're dealing with, right? Like if you're dealing with like there's a high supply of houses, right? Like it might make sense for you to stage a home because you want to kind of stand out. But right now, like we're dealing with like a shortage of house where everyone that wants to buy a house just is having a hard time. Like I'm looking even right now, like looking for a deal is like there's almost nothing out, like not even like
Yeah.
in a certain price range. Like there's just not that many people selling homes, and whenever they are, they're gone in like matter of minutes. So just a very interesting time for real estate. Where do you see that going, by the way? Like I know we talk about it all the time, but like where do you see um like this going, like in the, like kind of the future or this year? Do you think anything's going to change?
I think the prices are going to continue to rise or
Mm-hmm.
maybe stay the same. I don't think they're going to fall. It's funny. I recently looked at a graph of housing prices since the Second World War, and there's never really been a crash.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was a little slowdown in the early 90s, where it kind of stayed flat, went down a little bit for like 3 years, but then it just started rising again.
Yeah.
2008, same thing. We had our crash. The states had their crash, but
Hmm.
the reality is that they recouped like 50% of the value that they lost in like 2 years, two, three
Yeah.
years, and then more than exceeded it. And then now, like if you bought at the height of the crash in 2008, you'd still be making a huge profit if you were
Right.
to sell now. So it's kind of like, there's only so much land. People got to live somewhere.
Hmm.
And in Canada and in southern Ontario, you it's difficult to build. You
Yep.
can't build in the green belt, can't build here, not in my
Mm.
backyard,
Yep.
no dual units in my neighborhood, and that's just killing us, and the prices are going up. And that's what's causing this in all these
Hmm.
areas like Welland, St. Catharines, because there's nowhere to live. And if you want to live in a decent city with grocery stores and running water, then you
Yep.
you have you have to pay. Like that's just
Yep.
how it is right now.
100%. No, that's very interesting, especially like what you said, like where if you would have bought at the height of the crash, meaning like right before everything went down, and you held on until now, you would still be in a massive profit, which is really interesting to think about. But I guess like we just have to like deal with it and continue figuring out, how to work through it. Like, but I think that it's interesting also what you bring up when you speak about being really hard to build, because I also look around and I'm like, well, the government is also making a huge effort to bring a lot of people into Canada. Um, so it's like, okay, well, where are all these people that we're going to bring in going to live? They're all going to need a place to live, right? So um, that's something to say about the real estate, the outlook of the real estate price and how scarce it's going to become. So let's stay tuned and let's just hope we remain with a roof over our heads. But any other expense that people maybe like should be thinking about or that we didn't speak about today before we wrap this up?
I think it's not really an expense, so to speak, but
Hmm.
just in terms of like I guess like what I would have done differently, like what we could have done, and I know we had to move on and stuff, but
Yeah.
I mean if you look at the difference of the price changes from when we sold even to now, like
Hmm.
we sold at 500, a nice renovated, updated, cosmetically, 1100 square foot house, 1200
Yeah.
square foot house. That on the market, that same house, it's going for like 680.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's like the a lot of times with flips is sometimes the market just makes up for your mistakes.
Hmm.
Like if you just hold it long enough, like you'll win.
Yeah, 100%. Now, so this kind of something to say, like when you are in the flip, like make sure that you're not in like this super tight cash flow position, because you could have a great opportunity to hold on to it, maybe toss a tenant in there for even if it's like a 6-month lease, and then like sell at the end of that 6 months and make a even bigger profit at that point.
Put some
So
students in there, put
exactly.
put a family in there with a 1 year lease, and yeah.
Hmm. And yeah, so no, that's really interesting. No, I appreciate you bringing that up and bringing that perspective, even though like it hurts a little bit, like what we lost on
Yeah.
$180,000. um but it's all good, we'll make it back. No, but that's very insightful. But overall, I think that this whole thing was super insightful for people. Like I hope people are tuning in from beginning to end, because there's so many gems that we are handing you guys. But so Andrew, we really do appreciate you stopping by the podcast and sharing all this insight. Where can people find you if they want to flip homes, if they want to get in contact with you, or where can the people find you?
Yeah, just you could DM me on Instagram, Andrew Balach. It's just my name. So yeah, feel free to message me and we can talk more about it.
Yeah, 100%. And he's great to partner with. I love working with him, and we have bigger plans to do some bigger things in the future. So if you guys do want to partner with us, definitely reach out. I'll put all his links in the description as always. But for us, we are going to hop off of here because we have been speaking for a while. This is probably going to be my longest episode, but it's going to be so worth it. So I hope you are still here. If you made it here and you did get some value out of this, make sure that you share this with someone that you care about or someone that you don't care about. You already know that I don't care, as long as you share it and that someone someone gets the value from it. Make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube. Make sure that you follow us on all social media platforms. But for today, just ensure that you're taking the steps. Make sure that you're taking the steps to ensure that you're 1% closer to your goals than you were yesterday. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Andrew, for joining.